down last night, rolling from side to side. I laid down last night, rolling from side to side. Well, I was not sick, no. I was just dissatisfied. You know what I'm talking about?
The one thing I really wanted to get into with you was from your early days was the story about your dad's drugstore and the guy that asked for a Coke and what an impact that had on you.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you that. I'll tell you all that story because it is something that happened to me at the age of maybe 8, 9 o'clock, 8, right in there, that actually set the course for my life as far as how I felt about these issues. I'm this high, you know. My dad would always teach me how to do things in the drugstore, and one of them was how to serve a Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola, in case you hadn't noticed, is very ritualized. Everything about it. I mean, you've always seen the signature the same, the color's the same, all kinds of things. The shape of the bottle was the same. It's changed now, I guess, but it was always that hourglass, and the glass that had Coca-Cola written in it was shaped like that. It was always ritualized, right? So anyway, my dad taught me how to serve a Coke because I was working in the store, always working in the store. And I was proud of working in the store at that age. I thought I was hot stuff. But anyway, he taught me how you open the cap, and then you pour half, and then you set it down side by side on the counter, and that's it in front of the customer. And they, okay, I'll do that. Well, that was a day that was blazing hot in Detroit, and it gets very humid and very hot in Detroit in the summertime. So this man came in very humbly and asked for a Coke, put his nickel, it was a nickel, put his nickel down. I pour it, and I set it up here. And he looks at the door, and he looks at the counter, and he looks at me. He don't know what to do. He's recently arrived from the South.
Right.
And as a black man in Detroit, which was very segregated, he did not know what to do. He was just, what do I? And so I'm gesturing, sit down, sit down. And he's still don't know what to do. And just about that moment, my dad was in the prescription room. It was a compounding pharmacy, and he had to make the medicines out of the different things, you know. And so he's back in there doing that, but he saw that little drama, and he came rushing out. You get out of here. You know you're not supposed to be in here. Don't you ever do that again. Don't you ever come in here. Barbara, don't you ever... And then he explained, well, the man didn't know what to do, kind of slowly went out the door and faded away. And my dad kept yelling at me about how if you start letting these people in here, all these people around here are going to be upset because they don't believe in those people mixing with us people, and it's going to be very bad for my business. You don't understand how much it would impact my business. You know, as much you explain to a little kid. And so, okay, that's the end of that. But how did that affect me? Well, I was dumbfounded, really.
I think you would be embarrassed for both him and yourself.
Exactly, yeah. I was, and I couldn't tell why my dad was so mad at me, and so. But then I thought, well, I understood later as I got older why, but it was that economic monkey wrench they got over your head all the time.
Right.
You know, but I realized my dad he had insulted a grown man in front of a child. That wasn't right. He had misunderstood what my gestures were, and he had all of this was wrong. It is not fair.
Right.
And I say that phrase because I know every single one in the audience, and you and everybody, at one time in your childhood has said, "That's not fair." Children know fair from unfair.
They do. Yeah.
They know, and they know they either do that behavior or don't.
And it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. Yeah.
So I thought, well, this is not fair. And I realized in years later that I had actually taken that black man's sense of, I don't know, someone taking away his dignity or
humiliation or whatever.
The humiliation and all that. Whatever. I took it inside.
Yeah.
I took his pain.
Yeah.
And I kept it all my life.
Right.
It stayed right there.
Yep.
So behave in front of your children the way you think that you want life to be. Don't make mistakes like telling them unfair things.
Yeah. Well, I like what you're saying because you're really saying kind of like your attraction to, African American music probably was somewhat created in that moment.
It might have been.
In a
I don't
way.
know. Well,
in
appreciation for the culture in general.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the door was open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm just saying that's such a big part of blues, especially blues, but jazz as well.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Well.
That's why I think black people sang that music when they did, because it was like there were no other outlets.
Yes, and a lot of people think the blues, at least they used to think the blues was sad music.
Yeah, yeah.
Was a downer and all about my troubles. Boo-hoo.
But that's people that don't know.
Boo-hoo. And then and then there's the other people who think it's only for sex.
Yeah.
Shake your booty and
But
have a
it's
ball
life.
and forget your troubles. And there's something in both of those understandings that misses the boat.
Yeah.
It's really music that came out of the need for survival. And
expression.
It remains survival.
Yeah.
Is the key thing.
Right.
Whatever's happened to me, good, bad, funny, sad, it's all about survival.
I like the explanation that a lot of blues singers had back when, and where they would say, when I do this, it makes me feel better.
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean? That's a beautiful way of putting it.
Yeah,
and then B.B. King had one of my favorites. He goes, they said, how can you sing about this music, when you live in a mansion and all this? He goes, well, I have a long memory. And I thought that was a beautiful way of putting it. Because that's, that's what it is. You know that, from
That's
your
right.
own life, that,
Sure.
everyone goes through, I think African Americans in this country have gone through a lot more of it than white people sure have, but everybody goes through, troubles.
Damn
is
right.
the bottom line.
Yeah, sure.
Everybody goes through troubles. It doesn't matter if you are a millionaire. Yeah.
We need the blues.
Yeah. But the other thing I wanted to just kind of get into after you started taking your singing lessons was by the time you were a teenager, I didn't even know this till I picked up that article in the Times about you saying that Nina saying that your FBI file goes back to when you were a teenager.
When I was 18.
That's amazing.
Oh,
and that you started singing in for union organizations and strikes.
UAW.
And so on.
UAW was on a roll after the war, World War II. We had so many wars, you got a number of them.
Yeah.
World War II, the unions had not been able to organize or strike or anything during the war. Now the war is over. Now you can start to build your union, and that's what they were doing, was building the UAW. So they had a lot of Shopgate meetings and all kinds of affairs and events. And I was lucky enough to be somehow part of that, brought in by people who understood the role of music, which I think the role of music always has been bringing people together. That's
Yeah.
kind of the fundamental
Absolutely.
role.
Yeah.
And I guess people saw that if you came.
So now, did Pete Seeger have something to do with pulling you?
Yeah, Pete Seeger came to town. He was looking for someone to start a People's Songs chapter. He was trying to build an organization called People's Songs, which was to spread, distribute, and publish these songs that were being written day by day for these strikes and other struggles, race issues, and all sorts of issues. And People's Songs Bulletin was his vehicle for doing this. And he was looking for someone to head up a Detroit chapter. And somebody put us together, and we talked about it, and I agreed to try to do it, but I was still only 18. Well, I don't know if you want to know what happened. People's Songs eventually evolved into the Sing Out magazine and all of that, but
That was from that?
yeah, it was the same people.
So Irwin? Was it Irwin?
Yeah, Irwin and
Irwin Silver is Barbara's last husband.
yes, and latest and greatest.
Latest and greatest. There you go.
40 some odd years together.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Sing Out magazine, for a lot of people that don't know it, is a famous one of the first folk magazines, right?
The leading one, it always has been.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I guess it only kind of stopped publishing. I don't know if it even has stopped.
Yeah.
Does it still?
Could be.
I guess it did. Finally petered out, but it was the Bible for all the folk
Right.
music fans of the time, and the people who were singing and the people who were listening, the people who wanted to see the record reviews and
Right.
read the articles about the musicians and
The latest. yeah,
understand
yeah.
and get a new song out of the magazine. Anyway,
Now,
yeah. so-
didn't you say that the first time you really sang in front of people was at one of these union things?
well, the first time I realized
that you wanted
what
to
the
do it.
possibilities
Yeah,
were
yeah.
was at the Barnum Hotel demonstrations, which I'll tell you about the Barnum Hotel, the big old hotel on the one side of the street of Cadillac Square. Cadillac Square in Detroit is like Times Square in New York. Or
Right.
whatever. It's the place, is the place. The hotel was notoriously racist because a couple of years before this incident I'll tell you about, Paul Robeson, singer, actor, everything,
Icon, yeah.
icon,
Yeah.
was refused admittance to the hotel.
Wow.
And there was a big to-do about that in Detroit. But this is a couple of years after that. A person in our little circle of lefties was working as a secretary at the National Maritime Union, which was on the opposite side of the Barnum Hotel. So she and others determined that it might be a good idea to test Michigan Accommodations Act, which was on the books, but not obeyed very often. Equal accommodations, never, a lot of places just, no. You couldn't go to a dime store and have a cup of coffee. If you were black, we couldn't be sitting there
Right.
like that.
Right.
We decided to have this test group. We made up a little, maybe, I don't know how many, a handful of us, to go in and have lunch in there, mixed group. So we go in and we sit down. They seat us in the back near where they take the garbage out, near the bathrooms, the worst place in a restaurant. And we're sitting there, nobody waits on us. We're sitting there, nobody waits on us. And about an hour later, somebody says, "You might as well leave because you're not going to be served." Oh, really? Oh, well, let's see about that. So we decided to start picketing the place and make them obey the law. So we all got out our little contact lists and called up unions and church groups and PTAs and wherever we had connection. So join us. We're going to do this thing and pretty soon we had a big old picket line that was every Saturday going around in a line out in front of the Barnum Hotel, which meant they lost business, I started singing as I marched. We're gonna roll, we're gonna roll, we're gonna roll the Union on. We're gonna roll the Union on. Or if the boss is in the way, we're gonna roll it over him, roll it over him, roll it over him. That kind of thing. Anyway, I saw, as I sang, that I could sing, projecting my voice out enough that all these people could hear me and follow it. It's just the power of being able to do that.
Right.
I thought,
I know, like, by the late 40s, you moved to Los Angeles, and not long after that moved to San Francisco.
Yeah.
Got involved with a lot of the trad jazz people, like sitting in with Turk Murphy, playing with Dick Oxtott, people like George Lewis from New Orleans, and Pops Foster, Kid Ory,
yeah.
coming out and playing the clubs. And I know this Trouble in Mind was one of your earlier records, probably your earliest, your first records.
Yeah.
San Francisco
57.
Records, 57. And that this really opened the door kind of to your playing across the country and getting gigs in places like Chicago at, say, Albert Grossman's Gate of the Horn, or Ed Pearl's Ash Grove in Los Angeles. It sounds like the trad jazz scene in San Francisco kind of blew it up, in a sense.
I was no longer just a folk singer. I was a blues singer.
In other words, you kind of started as a folk singer, got into the trad jazz arena, and then eventually made it into the blues scene very heavily by the late 50s.
I just want you to know, though, that I never saw them as categories.
No, I know you didn't.
At all.
I know you didn't. But there were connections between each one, for sure.
Like that, yeah.
I mean, I was going to say, like, when you get into Chicago, when you get into people like somebody like Mama Yancey that lived there, that was really a connection to, Jimmy Yancey, which was Boogie Woogie. And then you have people like, Louis Armstrong, who you worked with, who ended up in Chicago playing with, was it Kid Ory that he played with?
But this is a whole different trajectory, so don't mix the two.
Right. I'm just saying Chicago was a major
hub
for music.